A homeless pregnant woman carrying twins collapsed in the middle of a rain-soaked street. Most people walked past her. Some pretended not to see her. Others whispered that she deserved what had happened. But then a black luxury car suddenly stopped beside her, and the man who stepped out was the last person anyone expected, Kang Min-jae, the ruthless Korean billionaire known for destroying competitors, firing executives without mercy, and trusting absolutely no one. Yet the moment he saw the desperate young mother lying in the rain, something changed. He ordered his driver to open the door, and from that moment on, he would risk everything to protect her. The question is, why would a man with a heart of stone become the guardian angel of a woman he had never met? Because hidden behind her tears was a secret so dangerous that powerful people wanted her silenced forever. And when the truth finally came out, it didn't just change her life, it changed him too. 6 months earlier, Diana Idris had everything she needed to be happy. Not wealthy, not famous, but settled. And that mattered. She worked the night shift at Seoul General Hospital as a registered nurse. She had a small apartment in Mapogu with a window that caught the morning light. She had Sophia, her closest friend in Seoul, loud and warm, and the kind of person who showed up with food before you even asked. And she had Denzel Carter. Denzel was American, like her. He had moved to Seoul 3 years ago to build a trading business. He was sharp-looking, smooth-talking, and every time he walked into a room, he owned it. Diana had fallen for him slowly, then completely.
"You're gonna make the best mother one day,"
he told her one evening, his hand resting on her cheek. She smiled. She had believed him. She shouldn't have. The morning Diana found out she was carrying twins, she sat in the hospital bathroom for 15 minutes, just staring at the ultrasound photo. 2 heartbeats, 2 lives. She pressed her hand against her stomach, and for the first time in years, she cried. Not from sadness, but from something that felt like wonder. She called Denzel immediately. He didn't pick up. She called again. Voicemail. She drove to his apartment instead, rehearsing what she would say, trying to arrange her excitement into something that wouldn't overwhelm him. She took the elevator to his floor, knocked twice. The door opened, but it wasn't Denzel who answered. It was a woman. Tall, elegantly dressed, a diamond ring catching the light on her left hand. Diana felt her mouth go dry. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her voice smooth and unbothered. Then Denzel appeared behind her. He froze. The silence that followed lasted only 3 seconds. But inside those 3 seconds, Diana's entire understanding of her life collapsed. "Diana," Denzel said carefully, "this isn't..." "Who is she?" the woman asked, her tone sharpening. Denzel looked at his fiancée. Because that's what she was, Diana would later learn. And then looked back at Diana with an expression that made her stomach drop. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't a shame. It was a calculation. "She's nobody," Denzel said quietly. "A former colleague." Diana couldn't speak. She couldn't move. She just stood there holding the ultrasound photo in her hand. "Denzel," she finally said, "I'm pregnant." The woman's eyes snapped to her stomach, then to Denzel's face. "She's lying," Denzel said immediately. "She's been unstable, obsessive. This is exactly what I warned you about." Diana looked at him, really looked at him, and realized she was staring at a stranger wearing a familiar face. She walked away. She didn't cry. Not yet. But the story Denzel told after that, the story his fiancée's powerful family helped spread, moved faster than anything Diana could have stopped. Within a week, social media was full of it. A nurse who had allegedly harassed a businessman. A woman who had invented a pregnancy to trap a man. Diana's name appeared on anonymous forums, then on gossip pages, then, somehow, in the inbox of the hospital board. 3 weeks later, she was called into her director's office. "This is not a performance issue," the director said, not meeting her eyes. We are simply restructuring the department. I've worked here for 4 years, Diana said. I know, and we appreciate your service. She was handed a severance envelope and escorted out of the building by security. Sophia found her sitting on a bench outside the hospital, still in her scrubs, staring at the pavement. Diana. Sophia sat beside her without asking, pressed her shoulder against hers. Talk to me. They fired me, Diana said very quietly. Sophia said nothing for a moment. Then, we'll fight it. With what? Diana laughed, but it had no humor in it. A lawyer I can't afford? Against a family that owns 3 of the buildings in this district? Sophia reached over and held her hand. That night, Diana called her mother back in the States. Mom, she said, I need help. Things have gotten complicated here. There was a long pause on the other end. Diana, her mother said finally, your father and I have been talking, and we think you made choices, and choices have consequences. I'm having twins, Mom. We know, and we think you need to think seriously about what kind of life you can actually provide. Diana ended the call. She sat on the floor of her apartment, the one she now couldn't afford, and pressed both palms flat against the carpet. She needed to feel something solid, because everything else was dissolving. That was 2 months before the storm. 2 months of fighting alone. 2 months of job rejections, dwindling savings, and a landlord who had stopped being patient. 2 months of Sophia bringing groceries and refusing to accept money Diana didn't have. 2 months of growing heavier, slower, and more exhausted, while the 2 lives inside her kept growing, indifferent to disaster. The night of the storm, Diana had just left her 3rd job rejection of the week. A clinic in Yongsan had seemed promising. The hiring manager had smiled warmly through the interview, then Googled her name during a bathroom break and returned with a different expression entirely. He thanked her for coming in. He said he'd be in touch. He wasn't. Diana stepped out into the street just as the rain turned from a drizzle into something violent. She had no umbrella. She'd sold it at a second-hand shop 2 weeks ago for transit fare. She walked 2 blocks before her body simply stopped. Not dramatically. Not like in the movies. Her legs just gave out. Slowly, like something folding under weight. And she went down onto one knee on the wet pavement, one hand going instinctively to her stomach. Hey, someone nearby said, then kept walking. Excuse me. She tried, reaching toward a passing woman who glanced at her and looked away. The rain hammered the street. Water ran along the curb. Diana pressed her free hand against the ground and tried to rise, but her body refused. Her vision blurred. The cold was inside her now, deep in her chest, and all she could think was, not here, not on this street, not tonight. Then the black car stopped. Kang Min-jae had not survived 41 years of life by making impulsive decisions. He had survived by calculating every move, every word, every silence, every step. With the precision of someone who understood that the world was not generous and had no intention of becoming generous. He had built a technology and investment empire from the ruins of a family that had tried to bury him. He had earned his reputation, the ruthless reputation, honestly. His assistant Shin said nothing when the car slowed. He had worked for Sang-hoon for 6 years and had learned to ask questions only when they mattered. Sang-hoon stepped out of the car into the rain. He walked to where Diana was crouched on the pavement. Wet, visibly pregnant, one hand on her stomach and one on the ground, and crouched down so that they were level. She looked up at him. Her eyes were exhausted, not afraid, which surprised him. Just exhausted, in the way of someone who has run out of the energy even to be surprised by bad things. Can you stand? He asked. I just need a minute. she said. You need a hospital. I'm fine. You are not fine, he said, very plainly. You are on the ground in the rain. You are 7 months pregnant with what appears to be more than one child. And you just told me you're fine. She blinked at him. Get in the car, he said. I'll take you to a doctor. I don't know you. No, but you know that staying on this pavement is not a viable option. He stood, then extended his hand downward. My name is Kang Min Jae. I'll explain the rest inside where it is dry. She looked at his hand. She looked at the rain. She took his hand. Mi-cha, Sang-hoon's personal physician, was waiting at the residence when they arrived. She examined Diana quickly and professionally. Blood pressure, fetal heart rates, hydration, while Sang-hoon stood in the hallway outside and listened. Shin appeared beside him with a tablet. Sir, you have the Yoido board meeting at 7 tomorrow. Reschedule it. Shin blinked. The entire board has traveled from. Reschedule it. Shin said nothing further. He typed something on the tablet and retreated. Mrs. Han, the housekeeper, brought tea to the room where Diana sat wrapped in a blanket. She set it down without a word and withdrew with the efficiency of someone trained in discretion. Sang-hoon entered the room and sat across from Diana. For a moment, neither spoke. You're the CEO, Diana said finally. Kang Min Jae, I've seen your name on billboards. Yes. Why did you stop? He considered the question. You looked like someone who had been failed by everyone around her, he said. I recognized it. She studied his face. That's a strange thing for a billionaire to say. Perhaps. He folded his hands. What is your name? Diana? Diana Idris. How long have you been in Seoul, Diana Idris? 5 years. And tonight? Is there someone I should contact? Family? A partner? She laughed, that same laugh with no humor in it. No. The word landed with a weight that didn't need explanation. Sang-hoon was quiet for a moment. Then, you may stay here tonight. Mrs. Han will prepare a room. Tomorrow, Mi-cha will do a proper examination. Diana looked at him carefully. Why? Because it is a reasonable thing to do. People don't just. She stopped, started again. Men like you don't stop for women like me. Men like me? He repeated slowly. Have, on occasion, been known to surprise people. He rose. Rest. We can talk more in the morning. She stayed for more than one night, not because she didn't try to leave. She did. On the second morning, she dressed carefully, thanked Mrs. Han, and walked to the front entrance with every intention of going back to wherever she was going. Sang-hoon was in the foyer. Mi-cha's report indicates your blood pressure is still elevated, he said, without looking up from the document he was reading. She recommends 3 more days of monitored rest. I can't just live in your house. You're not living here. You're recovering here. Those are different things. He finally looked up. I am aware this feels uncomfortable. I am not asking you to be comfortable with it. I am asking you to be medically responsible. She stood there for a long moment. Then she took off her coat and handed it back to Mrs. Han. Over the following days, something unexpected began to happen. It wasn't romantic. Not then. It was quieter than that. It was the way Sang-hoon asked questions without showing sympathy. The way he listened without trying to fix everything immediately. The way he sat across from her at dinner and talked about things that had nothing to do with her situation. Buildings, trade patterns, a book he'd read. As if treating her like a completely normal person was its own form of care. You don't pity me, she said one evening. He looked up from his food. No. Most people who've helped me so far have pitied me. I could feel it, like they were lending something they expected to return. I don't lend things, Sang-hoon said. I invest or I don't. There's no middle position. And what are you doing with me? He considered it. I'm not sure yet, he said honestly. But I don't think it's a pity. Sophia visited on the fourth day and spent the first 3 minutes circling the entrance hall of Sang-hoon's residence with her mouth open. Diana, she whispered. This man has an indoor water feature. Sophia? This is not a normal apartment. This is a monument. He's not here right now. Stop. Sophia sat down and lowered her voice. Okay, tell me everything. Who is he really? What does he want? He hasn't asked for anything, Diana said. Sophia stared at her. Nothing? Nothing. Diana, men who look like that and live like this do not bring strangers home for no reason. Diana looked at her hands. I know, but I don't know what the reason is yet. And right now, I'm too tired to run from someone who hasn't hurt me. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she reached over and squeezed Diana's hand. Okay, she said softly. Okay. On the 7th day, Shin placed a folder on Sang-hoon's desk. Sang-hoon opened it. Inside were bank records, communication logs, a series of emails between Denzel Carter and a man named James Osei, the founder of Osei Capital Group and the father of Denzel's fiancée. Cross-referenced financial transactions, a timeline. Sang-hoon read it twice. Then he sat back in his chair and was still for a long time. He had ordered the investigation 5 days ago. Quietly, because something about Diana's story hadn't sat right with him. The speed of her firing, the coordinated nature of the social media campaign, the fact that a hospital board had dismissed a decorated nurse based on unverified anonymous complaints. This was not the chaos of a personal scandal. This was architecture. He called Kim Ki-cha, his legal advisor, into the office. Diana Idris, he said. What is her legal standing? Kim Ki-cha set down her notepad. Currently, terminated without documented cause. No formal charges against her, but the reputational damage functions almost as effectively. Any institution that considers hiring her will find the same search results. And the source of those results? Traced back to 3 accounts, all created within the same 48-hour window. All connected to IP addresses registered to buildings owned by Osei Capital. Sang-hoon closed the folder. What else? Kim Ki-cha hesitated. There's something else, something larger. She slid a second document across the desk. Approximately 8 months ago, Diana Idris was working a night shift at Seoul General. She assisted in an emergency procedure involving a patient named Lee Yong, a mid-level accountant for a subsidiary of Osei Capital. The procedure was routine, but the patient was disoriented, delirious. He said several things Diana would have heard, about internal fund transfers, shell companies, numbers. Sang-hoon looked at the document. She didn't know what she heard, Kim Ki-cha continued. She was a nurse doing her job, but someone in that hospital reported the incident to Osei Capital, and 6 weeks later, the campaign against Diana began. The room was very quiet. She witnessed a financial crime, Sang-hoon said slowly, without knowing she witnessed it. And they couldn't risk her ever connecting the dots. So they destroyed her life before she had the chance. Kim Ki-cha nodded. Sang-hoon stood and walked to the window. Below, the city moved with its usual indifference. Towers of glass and commerce, structures built on the assumption that power protects itself by eliminating the powerless. He had seen this before. He had lived something like this before. What do we need? He said quietly, to bring this down. He didn't tell Diana immediately. He told Mi-cha to continue the checkups. He told Mrs. Han to make sure Diana ate properly. He told Shin to keep his schedule cleared of non-essential meetings. And then, one evening, he sat across from Diana in the sitting room. She was reading, her feet tucked under her, both hands resting on her stomach, and said, I need to tell you something. She lowered the book. He told her carefully, not softly. He was not a soft man, but carefully. He explained what his investigators had found. The patient, the overheard conversation, the timeline. Diana was very still throughout. When he finished, the silence stretched long enough that he wondered if she had absorbed it. Then she said quietly, I remember him. Sang-hoon waited. The patient, Lee Yong, he was frightened, not from the procedure, from something else. He kept saying numbers. I thought he was confused from the sedative. I charted it as anxiety. Her voice dropped lower. I didn't understand what I was hearing. You weren't supposed to. But they thought I did. She pressed her hand against her stomach. They destroyed my career, my family, my relationship, which was already a lie, but still. She stopped. Then, with something sharp in her voice, they targeted my children, Sang-hoon, before they were even born. It was the first time she had used his name. He didn't move, but something shifted in his expression, something careful and contained. Yes, he said. What are you planning to do? Expose them, completely, legally, permanently. She looked at him for a long moment. Why? This has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with what is right, he said. That's not an answer. That's a principle. He was quiet for a moment. Then, my mother was abandoned when I was 4 years old. She was ill, alone. My father had already moved on to a more convenient woman. My mother had no income, no family support, and a young child. She survived because one person, a stranger, helped her find housing and work and asked for nothing in return. He paused. That stranger never knew what that decision meant to us. I have spent my entire adult life trying to understand why someone would help another person for no reason at all. Diana's eyes were wet. I still don't fully understand it, he said, but I believe in it. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, very quietly, tell me what you need from me. Your testimony, when you're ready, and only when the babies are safe. She nodded, slowly. Jack and Kira, she said suddenly. He looked at her. That's what I'm naming them, Jack and Kira. He nodded once, and for the first time since she'd known him, something in his face that wasn't quite a smile, but was very close to one, appeared and disappeared very quickly. If you've been watching Diana fight through every betrayal, every closed door, every silent phone call, and you're still here, then you already know this story isn't over. Subscribe, hit the like button, and drop justice for Diana in the comments right now. Because what happens next? No one saw it coming. Madame Sujin Kong arrived at the residence without warning on a Tuesday morning. She was 73 years old, small, impeccably dressed, and possessed of an authority that seemed to rearrange the atmosphere of any room she entered. She was Sang-hoon's grandmother, the only family member he had never cut off. And the moment she saw Diana sitting at the breakfast table with both hands around a cup of tea and a visible pregnancy, she stopped walking. Diana looked up. Madame Sujin looked at her grandson. Sang-hoon, she said in Korean. Grandmother, he replied in English, deliberate. Madame Sujin switched to English without missing a beat. Who is this? Diana Idris. She is a guest. She is very pregnant. I noticed. Diana set down her tea. Good morning, she said with the composure of someone who had faced harder things than a billionaire's grandmother. Madame Sujin studied her for a long, thorough moment. Then she walked to the table, pulled out a chair, sat down, and said to Mrs. Han, tea and the small cakes. She turned back to Diana. You are American. Yes. What brought you to Seoul? Work. I'm a nurse, was a nurse. And now? currently unemployed, temporarily housed, and about to have twins, which is terrifying. Madame Sujin's mouth curved, just slightly. I like directness, she said. My grandson has never brought a woman here before, in 41 years. I didn't bring her, Sang-hoon said carefully. I assisted her. The difference being? He said nothing. Madame Sujin looked at Diana again, long and thorough. You've been hurt, she said, not unkindly. Yes. And my grandson is trying to fix it. He is, Diana said, and I'm still deciding whether to let him. Madame Sujin looked at her grandson with something that bordered on approval. Then she reached for her tea. Fix it properly, she told Sang-hoon. Or don't touch it at all. Ji-hoon Kong, Sang-hoon's father, heard about Diana through the family's inner circle 2 weeks later. He called Sang-hoon on a Friday afternoon, his voice carrying the particular temperature of a man accustomed to being deferred to. I'm told you've installed a pregnant stranger in the residence. I've provided accommodation to a woman who required medical attention. Sang-hoon, you understand how this looks. I understand how it looks to people who have chosen to prioritize appearances over substance. Yes. A pause. You're being reckless. I'm being deliberate. There is a difference. This woman, her name is Diana Idris, and what is being done to her is a crime. I intend to address it. Another pause, longer this time. Is this about your mother? Ji-hoon said finally. The question landed like a stone dropped into still water. This is about justice, Sang-hoon said very quietly, which is a concept I did not learn from you. He ended the call. He stood at his desk window for a long while afterward, looking at nothing in particular. Lee Young-kang had died when Sang-hoon was 19. She had spent her last years in a small house in Incheon, working as a seamstress, sending him through school on a seamstress's income and a mother's sheer, unbreakable will. She had never complained. She had never asked Ji-hoon for anything after he left. She had simply endured. Until she couldn't. Sang-hoon had built his empire for many reasons, but the oldest reason, the one he never spoke aloud, was simpler than any business strategy. He built it so that no one could do to someone else what had been done to her. The operation moved quickly after that. Kim Ki-ja coordinated with an independent forensic accounting team. They traced the shell companies, 14 in total, back through 3 layers of intermediary filings to Osei Capital. The diversions amounted to over $200 million routed across 4 years, disguised as legitimate infrastructure investments. Hana, a financial journalist who had been circling Osei Capital for 18 months with nothing concrete, received an anonymous envelope on a Monday morning. Inside was a partial document set, enough to start asking questions, enough to make a call. She called Sang-hoon's office. Shin put her through. Mr. Kang, Hana said, I think you already know why I'm calling. I expect so, Sang-hoon said. The documents I received suggest a significant fraud case connected to a deliberate destruction campaign against a private individual. That is accurate. Are you prepared to go on record? I am prepared to provide you with everything you need to run this story correctly, not selectively, completely. A beat. And the private individual? She will speak when she is ready. When will that be? When her children are born, and she has decided for herself. Jack and Kira Idris arrived on a cold Thursday morning in January. Both healthy. Both are loud. Both completely unaware of everything that had been rearranged for their arrival. Sophia was in the waiting room. She cried before Diana even sent word. She had just been sitting there, waiting, already crying. Mrs. Han had prepared the guest suite. Micha supervised the postnatal care. Madame Sujin arrived 1 hour after the birth with 2 small wrapped gifts and placed them on the table without explanation. Sang-hoon stood in the doorway of the recovery room. Diana was exhausted. The kind of exhausted that goes deeper than the body, that reaches all the way down into whatever place holds things for safekeeping. She had one baby in each arm. Her eyes were red. Her hair was pulled back unevenly. She looked at Sang-hoon. "They're here," she said. He stepped inside. He stood beside the bed and looked at Jack. Small, dark-lashed, already with a faintly indignant expression. And then at Kira, whose tiny hand had curled into a fist against Diana's chest. "They're here," he agreed. The room was quiet for a long moment. "I want to do the interview," Diana said. "When I'm recovered, I want to tell Hana everything." Sang-hoon looked at her. "You said I should decide for myself?" she said. "I've decided. They did this to silence me. The only way to answer silence is to be loud." He held her gaze for a long moment. "Then we'll be loud," he said. The boardroom confrontation happened on a Wednesday. Sang-hoon had arranged for Kim Ki-ja and a full legal team to be present when Osei Capital's representatives arrived for what they had been told was a private mediation session. They arrived expecting to offer a quiet settlement, a number with enough zeros to make a problem disappear. What they found instead was a table full of documentation, 3 forensic accountants, 2 attorneys, a financial intelligence unit observer, and Kang Min-jae, sitting at the head of the table, perfectly still, watching them walk in. "Gentlemen," Sang-hoon said, "please sit." The lead representative, a man named Park, expensive suit, controlled expression, sat down and looked at the documents in front of him, then looked up. "This is not a mediation," he said. "No," Sang-hoon agreed. "It is a reckoning." Park's jaw tightened. "You understand, Mr. Kang, that a man in your position has interests that are vulnerable." "Mr. Park." Sang-hoon's voice did not change in volume or temperature. It simply became more precise. "Every threat you are currently considering has been anticipated, documented, and rendered ineffective. This conversation has been recorded with the full knowledge of every person in this room. The Financial Intelligence Unit representative beside you will note any attempt at coercion, and the documentation on that table represents 4 years of forensic accounting." He paused. "What you should be doing right now is calling your attorney, not making threats to mine." Park looked at the table again. He picked up his phone. The investigation that followed took 4 months. James Osei was formally charged with financial fraud and obstruction. 3 Osei Capital executives were indicted. A further inquiry into the hospital board's relationship with Osei Capital's charitable arm revealed 2 board members had received undisclosed payments before Diana's termination. Denzel Carter was not charged. There was no direct financial crime attached to his specific actions, but his name appeared in every article, in every document, in every public summary. He left Seoul in February. No one publicized where he went. Diana received a formal settlement from Osei Capital's legal successors. Money she used to rent a proper apartment in Seodaemungu, enroll Jack and Kira in a proper care schedule, and begin the process of recertifying her nursing license. The hospital extended its offer of reinstatement again. This time, she wrote back, she said she would return, but only in a senior capacity, and only with a formal acknowledgement posted publicly of what had been done to her. They agreed within 3 days. Sophia came to the new apartment with champagne she couldn't afford and insisted on opening it anyway. "You did it," she said, pouring into mismatched glasses. "We did it," Diana said. "You did the hard part, the suffering part, the refusing to disappear part." Sophia raised her glass. "To Diana Idris, who refused." Diana raised her glass. "To everyone who helped." "Speaking of everyone who helped," Sophia gave her a particular look. "Have you talked to Sang-hoon?" Diana was quiet for a moment. "We talk," she said carefully. "That's not what I asked." "Sophia, I'm asking as your closest friend in all of Seoul. which I am officially, by appointment. She settled into the couch. He moved a mountain for you. He went up against a man who scares half this city. He rescheduled board meetings. He let his grandmother eat cake in his house on a Tuesday morning because of you. Diana looked down at her glass. It's complicated. Things worth having usually are. Sang-hoon came to the apartment 2 weeks after the move. He came on a Saturday, which was unusual. He brought nothing. No flowers, no envelope, no gesture. He knocked and stood in the doorway and looked briefly at the apartment. Small, warmly lit, with a baby mobile visible through the open bedroom door, and said, "You've made it comfortable." "I had a good teacher in Mrs. Han," Diana said. He smiled. Fully, this time. It changed his face completely. She stepped back and let him in. They sat at the small kitchen table. Kira was asleep in the bedroom. Jack was making his feelings about something known from a bouncy chair in the corner. Sang-hoon studied him with an expression of careful fascination, like a man encountering a phenomenon he hadn't yet classified. "He's always like this," Diana said. "Is he in pain?" "He's just opinionated." "Ah," Sang-hoon said. "That I understand." Diana laughed, a real one this time, full and unguarded. She hadn't heard herself laugh like that in a long time. The sound surprised her. Sang-hoon watched her. "I want to tell you something," he said after a moment. "Okay." "When I stopped the car that night," he paused, "I told you I recognized something in you. That was true. But there was something else, something I didn't say." He looked at his hands, then back at her. "My mother's name was Lee Young. She was abandoned with a young child in the rain, and no one stopped. Not one person." He breathed in slowly. "I have thought about that night, about what her life might have looked like if one person had simply stopped for 37 years. Diana was very still. "I didn't stop for you because I pitied you," he said. "I stopped because I have been the child of the woman no one stopped for. And I made a decision a long time ago that if I was ever in a position to be different," he looked up at her, "I would be different." The apartment was quiet. Outside, Seoul moved on with its usual indifference. Inside, Diana reached across the table and placed her hand over his. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. 6 months later, Jack and Kira were thriving. Loud, curious, and completely convinced the world existed for their entertainment. Diana had returned to Seoul General, not as a standard nurse, but as a senior clinical coordinator. Her record officially expunged, and her name, finally, clean. The story had made national news, then the international press. Hana's original article was nominated for 3 journalism awards. Diana was asked to speak at a healthcare advocacy conference on whistleblower protection. She agreed. She stood at the podium in a room of 400 people, looked out at the audience and said, "I did nothing heroic. I just refused to disappear, and it almost cost me everything. The only reason it didn't," she paused, "it's because one person chose to stop. And one person, it turns out, is enough." In the back of the room, Sang-hoon stood with his arms folded, watching. Madame Soo-jin sat in the front row, because she went wherever she chose, regardless of seating arrangements, and nodded once, slowly, in the way of someone confirming something they already knew. Sophia cried from the 3rd row, silently, with the quiet dignity of someone pretending not to cry. And somewhere in the middle of the room, Hana, notepad open out of habit, wrote one line and underlined it. She refused to disappear. The world does not always reward the righteous. It does not always punish the cruel. But sometimes the right person stops at the right moment on the right rain-soaked street. And that is enough to change everything. Diana Idris was targeted because she knew a truth someone wanted buried. She was abandoned because powerful people calculated that no one would care enough to look. They were wrong, and the man who proved them wrong was not a hero in the traditional sense. He was simply a person who remembered what it felt like to be the child of a woman the world walked past and chose to be different. Jack and Kira Idris would grow up knowing their mother's name stood for something. They would grow up in an apartment full of light. They would grow up watched over, not with pity, not with debt, but with the quiet, enduring presence of people who had chosen, freely and deliberately, to remain. Because sometimes the people who save us are not the ones we expected. They are strangers who look at us, not with judgment, not with calculation, but with recognition. And they stop. That's the whole story. That one decision, made in the rain, on an ordinary street, by an unlikely man, changed everything. If Diana's story moved you, if you've ever been the person on the ground while the world kept walking, drop the words, "They stopped for me," in the comments below. Subscribe for stories about people who refuse to disappear, about justice that comes slowly, but comes completely, about the strangers who become something more. Because every week, we tell another story that proves the same thing. One person is enough. Afro Soul Cinema writes this story, an original production. All characters are fictional.